after a long day. You need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone after fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft. Then tap on a beer like genuine draft. Study all the players, look closer to stats. A QB first, then a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio, then on your screen you see Jack with Ivan and Claudio. It's a take, never lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production. Keepin' it fantasy with your football fantasy. Keepin' it fantasy with your football fantasy. Keepin' it fantasy with your football fantasy. Keepin' it fantasy, it's a football fantasy.
And we're back once again. What's up? Welcome to Keepin' It Fantasy. If you don't know us, well, you just saw us over at another Bear show. I'm Ivan. This is Chris Jackal. What's going on? Another fantasy week down. I know there's some people that have had their teams pretty much be done since like week 4, and I know some people that are, riding strong with a team that's undefeated. And there's these teams that are just in the middle, kind of just not knowing where to go. And I have 2 of those teams. I have 2 teams, and I'm in 2 of those categories there. And one of them is not fun whatsoever. But anyways, guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. As always, become a patron at www.thetapeneverlies.com. Jackal, let's jump into it. How was your fantasy week?
Fucking horrible. It was an awful week, man. I too many leagues, too many problems, and I had a
more
first
leagues,
for myself.
more problems, bro.
Yeah, dude, seriously. We need Phil to cut us a new one, a new track. The Justin Fields stock that I took in him this year has just completely kicked me in the shins. I had a few backups in some certain situations, but I've been scrambling. It was tough, but to that point, my dynasty league the one league that I love, it's also my most expensive entry fee. I had made a nice trade when Fields was awful last year in the beginning of the season, and I came out looking, smelling like roses, and then it started out this year great. He's hurt, and my backup situation is I was scrambling. So now I'm trying to trade draft picks to try to get somebody, and they're all holding me over the coals now because they know they have me. I was undefeated. I've lost my 2 matchups, and it's fucking awful. But there's been some good. There's been some bad. There's some guys stepping up that, hey, the Puka keeps fucking killing it. Right. It's but you talk about the tale of two teams for you. It's been a tale of two seasons, it's been like a tale of 2 seasons for some players this year, man. I mean, some guys have looked awful, some guys have looked great, some guys have figured it out, and some guys have just been broken, like Deshaun Watson. If anyone started him last week, he got you negative points, with that fragile shoulder and that fragile brain of his, without those hands rubbing all over his body. I guess he's just not as confident as life in life.
It's a little too tight now.
Tight now. He needs the release. He needs that O-face to get out there every once in a while, apparently. But is there anybody, as we crack jokes and we get lost in the weeds here, but with respects to fantasy, there were some guys that played well, and we had some guys that didn't. And I thought maybe we briefly touch on that. Is there anybody on your squad, that or in your mind that you were shocked that did well this week, or are there any top performers that you just kind of want to get out of the way?
Well, I wouldn't say he wasn't necessarily a top performer, but I needed him in a pinch, right? Because I had Derrick Henry in a bye. In this league, I'm 6-1. I'm first overall right now. I'm going this week. I think I'm going up against the number 2 guy. So it's it's a big week. But if I found this guy and he maybe becomes a little consistent, Darrell Henderson from the Rams, 13.6 points for me, and that was huge. Yeah. Just like as a backup, finding him off the waiver wire.
Yeah, he was sitting out there too on Sunday morning. People did not,
If a running back picked up off the waiver wire could get me like over 10 points plus 10 plus. If you give me 15, I'm happy as hell. But like I could definitely get down with that if you can deliver that, as a guy that, is a rotational piece. I'm not gonna he's not my starter. Derrick Henry comes back, he's in there, but if you're gonna deliver that as a rotation guy, you're on my team.
I agree with you. Yeah, no, that's a good call. No, this running backs, injuries, CMC, didn't know you had Monday night and you're hoping if you had to hold on to him, they tried to help you out a little early. It's like, oh, it looks like he's going to play, but real quick, Bob, you asked a quick question about dynasty leagues compared to keeper leagues. Normally your league would have, with respects to keepers, you keep 1 or 3. I don't know how many people you were able to keep, but in a dynasty league, you keep your entire roster. And then you have a cut down number at some point in the offseason that you have to get your roster down to. We have a 25-man roster. We have to get it down to 15 players by, I think, a month before the draft. And then we have a 10-round draft. And all those picks are a lot. You have all your picks for the next 5 years you can trade. In multiple picks. It's fun. It's like running a team. And I've been doing that league for over 10 years now. And I have yet to fucking win it, but I love it. So, I've made the playoffs. So I've got kind of built myself a nice little team in this one. And it took a while, but you see the fruits of your labor, and it's kind of nice. You can kind of see some of your things work out. I've made some shitty trades, but I've made some really good ones as well. So, it's fun. If you can get into a dynasty league, I recommend it. They're a lot of fun.
So let's go ahead and get into. We'll do this. We'll run it like this. We're gonna go. Who's hot, who's not, and go right into the waiver wire after that.
Yeah, because we've been going at it for a while, and I think at the end of the day, I know guys want to see who we think we may want to pick up and get after it, because it is 10 something, and I think it's a good opportunity to get on the waiver wire. Make sure you get your picks in and get your fab set so you don't fuck up and miss out. So
exactly.
And we're talking about guys that did well. I mean, I could just give you a couple that I thought performed, like Rashee Rice for the Chiefs. I thought he was a guy that, people were talking about that just over the last couple of weeks has just slowly been demonstrating. We talked, I think it was 2 weeks ago. We did have a show last week. We brought up his value in terms of his targets ran and the production he was getting out of those. He didn't run a lot of routes, but he was putting up points when he was on the field. And now you're seeing him be, now he's on the field more, and you're seeing an increase in production. So I was extremely happy to see him get out there and have a big day. I was trying to bring up his entire numbers in front of me, but I would have to say Rashee Rice, he had a season high 64% on the field. Yeah, so he was out there playing, and that was great for him. He was averaging 51%, so I was excited to see that. And he did well. He only had 6 catches, 60 yards, but he found the pay dirt. So that makes out for a nice little day. So if you're able to get him, there's other guys that outperformed him and wide receivers that did really well. But I just thought he was somebody that, speaking of like the Henderson situation for you, he's a guy you might have been able to grab, play in your flex, you're dealing with an injured, like you had Debo out and you're able to get him. Now you got him in your wide receiver 2 slot or whatever. Right. You're better for it.
And it's very important for Mahomes, because now you have a young receiver who you seem to be building some chemistry with, right? You could trust another guy other than Kelsey, right? Because, I guess there's I don't know if there's any trust with Valdez-Scantling. I just, outside of who's a running back I'm thinking of from Rutgers? Pacheco. Yeah. And outside of Kelsey, I don't know if you fully trust anybody else, any of this other skill guys, 100%. Because Pacheco, like the way he runs, if I were a Chiefs fan, he'd earn my trust. Yeah. But when it comes to Mahomes and Kelsey, that's a dynamic duo. But imagine him having, when they had Tyreek Hill, imagine him having a trustworthy receiver as well. So now you got the triplets going.
And they were, there was all this hype early on about Justin Ross in the preseason, and he was going to be a guy that came out and did well. And, he's not on you're not seeing that name with fantasy relevance. But speaking of MVS, actually, but to your point about weapons for the Chiefs, that's always kind of been their Achilles heel recently, is like that wide receiver room, and they bring in Tony. They thought he was going to be the guy that was going to do really well. That was a bad trade they made in Dynasty, Bob, just to let you know. But I was going to bring up MVS. He had 5 targets. He had 3 catches on 84 yards, and he had a touchdown. So he actually had 17.4 fantasy points. Rashee Rice had 17. And Rice had 5 catches and 60 yards, 6 targets. So I apologize. I misspoke earlier. But yeah, the Chiefs are looking for that wide receiver one. But with respects to Mahomes, I mean, it just also speaks to his ability to spread it around, and they just need guys that can catch the ball, get open and catch the ball. And you're seeing that over there. They're clicking on all cylinders. So if you have any stock really, and I mean, shit, if you have Kelsey, you're loving life. He's arguably an NFL MVP, let alone fantasy MVP. Mahomes is throwing it everywhere. Rashee Rice is stepping into his own, and Pacheco has just been, he's been running the ball really well for them. So they got some guys with fantasy studs, man. Is there another guy that you wanted to talk about that did well, or Go ahead.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yes,
he put up some big points.
He's on my list.
He got a touchdown, 4 for 7, 63 yards. And a touchdown, 16.3 points. If you're looking at PPR, if you're looking at standard, he's still. I think he was number 12.
Yeah, double
overall.
digits.
Number 12 overall, and he had 12 points. If you're playing in standard leagues, but hey, that's the first time where I'm seeing him, make an impact a little bit this year. In my opinion, I have him on my bench. He stood there because I've been waiting for him to break loose. And if this is, the first sighting of him, opening up a little more, like maybe becoming more comfortable with the game speed, getting more touches or whatever the issue was that, he wasn't really effective in the first few weeks of the season, maybe this is his breakout game and he's going to start to be effective. So he was a guy that I was waiting for to break out, and he finally had a good week.
I'm going to just piggyback you're waiting for. Darren Waller had a monster game, 22.8 fantasy points. It was great to see. He was tight end 2 on the week. He had 8 targets, 7 catches for just under 100. He had 98 yards, but he had the touchdown. One of those catches was 20 plus, so you probably got maybe a little bonus possibly. But 22.8 fantasy points. And, he was a guy that you've been hoping and waiting, and, the old Danny Dimes neck issue and whatever. He had a Viagra stuck in his throat, and now he just can't figure it out. I don't know what the fuck's going on with him, but he performed for them, and it was nice to see him actually. His wife won the WNBA championship, and he went out and had a nice game. And I think he was out in Vegas celebrating today, actually. I think the parade was today. No, anyway. But I'm gonna shift over to some losers, and I say we breeze through these, and then we can kind of just get into the waiver wire. What do you think?
That's fine.
We talked about Deshaun. Just abysmal, man. I think with him playing, there were many people that scrambled, and I was looking across the leagues that I'm in, and anyone that really had him once they named him a starter, he started in almost all the leagues that I'm in right now, which I was kind of surprised, which I was one of them because I did start him in one of my leagues, and I didn't help because, like I said, he was negative points, and now they're saying that the injury he has could be a 4 to 6 week issue. So you don't know with this guy. Is there, Brian Robinson was another guy that I thought was an underperformer. And a guy that hurt me, that I thought was going to have a good week was out in the running back from Denver, Jaleel McLaughlin. Javonte Williams played, but Samaje Perine? He actually ended up being Pirine. He ended up being the running back too, and he just killed anybody's thoughts of this guy stepping in, because 2 weeks ago he actually did all right when Williams was, or 2.5 or 3 weeks ago when Williams was out, stepped in. He was like waiver wire claim number 1, and he has just been a waste of space for people's roster. So you're gonna have to drop his ass, unfortunately.
Well, there you
Higgins,
go.
Yep. Sorry.
I got another one. In Atlanta had some issues. They with Bijan had some type of a migraine issue and was not healthy, and they decided to go and play him, and it was just not the right move for anybody all around, for Bijan, for the Atlanta Falcons, for fantasy owners. It just was not the right move whatsoever. But, as bad as Bijan was, and, maybe it wasn't completely his fault being sick, Kyle Pitts was even worse. So 3 for 4, 47 yards,
He had a sick
7.7.
fucking catch, though. Did you see
He had
that
a
one
sick
catch?
catch. He had a sick catch, but
But that was it.
you're like this. Enough's enough. The way he's being utilized, people keep calling him the unicorn and shit like that.
Yeah.
You got to be able to go ahead and give him more targets and force that, like not necessarily force it. Like when I say force it, I don't mean like reckless. I mean you got to try to give him every opportunity to be a playmaker, and it just seems like they don't give a fuck. I don't know what Atlanta does. Maybe it's Ritter. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. But Kyle Pitts was a disappointment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He's just the enigma that is Kyle Pitts in terms of fantasy relevance. He is just, again, another waste, and he dropped this year with respects to where he was in the draft. But yeah, again, just Atlanta. I don't get Desmond Ridder. When they get a quarterback there, maybe Pitts will be, but he may be gone. Who knows? He may be traded after the trade deadline, if they're sellers or they're buyers, if, they can get their hands on a quarterback, because I know they'd love to. But before we jump into waiver wires, I just I wanted to bring up something real quick as we get approach the trade deadline for fantasy football. It's still a little bit away, but there's some guys that are out injured, that you may be able to get your hands on for some people that are kind of stressing right now with injuries. James Conner, he's going to be coming back soon. T. Higgins is going to be back. He is back. He was kind of a decoy in week 6. He didn't play much, but, coming off a bye, I think he's a guy you may be able to trade for this week just because he is coming off the injury, and people may be a little apprehensive to try to hold on to him and, be like, I don't know if he's going to, perform well. And then Karen Williams from the Rams, he's still going to be out 3 weeks, but when he was healthy, they put him out on the IR for a reason. That's a nice chunk of time for him to let that ankle get better. And I think when he was the clear starter when he was healthy. And when he's back, I think he's going to kind of jump right back into the role, because when he was there, he was out there for 88% of the snaps. He was the guy that got the ball. He averaged over 5 yards a touch. I just think he's somebody that, again, if you're in that position where you can stash someone and hold on, hey, may not be a bad play to go out and try to get a guy like that. So I wrote that down earlier. I wanted to make sure I threw that out there. But there is some guys out there you may be able to get your hands on, on a buy low type of situation because of the old injury, and if you get your hand right, you may have a luxury, or you have a couple guys on your bench because you played your cards right, and maybe you can turn that into a RB1 or a wide receiver one.
Yeah. Well, I got a guy in Kendrick Bourne, 25% of the leagues he's rostered in. If you're looking at PPR, the last 2 weeks, 19.3, 16.3. The Patriots, they've been bad. Like we have the same record. They have the same record as the Bears. Haven't been good, but were able to beat a good Buffalo team last week. Kendrick Bourne was able to put up 89 yards on 10 of 11 targets and receptions. You got to take a look. Even on a bad team, you got to take a look, especially if he's going to be the main target. You know what I'm saying? If he's the main target for Mac Jones or whoever's playing quarterback, maybe you should go ahead and stash him if he's going to continue to put up big numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate on that. I love the foresight. It's something that you have to do at this time, with the buys and everything happening. You kind of got to try to, if some guys are playing chess, you should try to play some, or while they're playing checkers, you need to try to, get your chess game going, and yeah, you got to make your own luck. We talk about it all the time, and you can't win if you don't play. So if you just sit back on your hands and you just make your waiver claims and that's all you're doing every week, you're probably not going to be that successful. You may just be lucky and fall into a win every once in a while, but yeah, you really got to work for it, man. You got to do a little bit of research, and hopefully we actually point you in the right direction every once in a while when we open our mouths, because that's what we're aiming to do here. I didn't know if you wanted to just jump right into the old proverbial waiver wire, my guy. You want to jump into it?
Oh, I thought we was already
Oh,
in.
all right.
I
Yeah,
thought we was already in the
so
pool.
you started it. I like
thought
where your head's
I thought
at.
we was
I
in
like.
the pool.
You're in the trust tree. You're in the trust tree.
I'll go ahead and I'll give one more and then I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, go ahead. I like
Josh Downs of the Indianapolis Colts. In standard, not a lot. Hold on, let me switch over. The past 3 weeks in PPR,
It's been awesome.
He's been in double digits.
Yep.
15.7, 13.1, 23.5 this past week against Cleveland. That's somebody that you need to go ahead and target and put on your football team because, like I said, they might be a bad team, but this guy might be a guy for them down the road. That's a contributor at the receiver position. Like I said, young can and he's only rostered in 35.8% of the league. So go after him. Maybe you strike lightning in a bottle. He maybe continues this and becomes a go-to guy for Indianapolis and a big contributor to your football team or your fantasy football team.
And I'm glad you brought him up, man, because he was a guy in college. He earned 34% of the team's targets, the third all time in NCAA history. So that guy, he is used to getting the rock, and that's turning into some success in the NFL. Since it looks like in week 7, he had 6 targets. He turned that into 23.5 fantasy points. Mm-hmm. So that's, again, high rate. That's efficient. That's making the most of your opportunities. But the beautiful thing is that Colts offense, it says here that they rank 3rd in pace of play, and he is on the field for 80% of he's ran 80% or more of the routes in 5 straight games for the Colts. So if they're running more plays and they're throwing the ball, Minshew threw for over 300 yards this past week. It just is a recipe for success. So if you could get your hands on Downs, I think you'd be pretty happy. He was the guy, in my opinion, to get last week. But if he is available, like Ivan said, he's still in under 40%. I would definitely try to get your hands on him, man. That's a great call. That's it. That is definitely a good call.
Where are you going, Jack?
So, you brought up Darrell Henderson. We talked about Rashee Rice. I'm going to bring up Kareem Hunt. I think he's a guy that is, what? If you can get Kareem Hunt, get Kareem Hunt. But, I think Kyler Murray is where I wanted to start because there's this rumors that, he's now practicing. They're saying that he's going to play. There was all sorts of conversations that they were just going to have him come back so they could sit him and then they could try to cut him at the end of the year. But I honestly think it looks like he's going to get some reps. Not even reps. I think he's just going to start in a couple of weeks. And I think he's a guy to get. He's rostered in about, depending where you look, anywhere from 50 to 60% of the leagues. But with the injuries to the quarterbacks, you may be able to get this guy or ride it out, and somebody else that has an injury, you could flip him. There's just some potential there. So if you could grab him, he may not play until week 10. That's against Atlanta. So, hey, something to think about, man.
Yeah, I mean, he could put up big fantasy numbers. If his head's in the game.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Call of Duty.
A lot of controversy around Kyler Murray, but if his head's in the game, he could be a dynamic football player. So yeah, definitely a stash. If you drafted him or if you picked him up early and you have an IR spot and you just put him there, smart of you. Kudos to you. But if he's available in your league, yeah, that's not a bad idea, Jack. We'll throw him on the bench, stash him, see what happens. Maybe he gets that team going. Maybe he picks up a couple wins and helps you get a few wins as well. Go ahead.
And I wanted to just stay with that theme with respects to like injury. I seem to be on this injury thing, and I don't know why it's been on my mind. But like, Anthony Richardson goes out for the Colts. Gardner Minshew comes in. We just talked about Josh Downs and that pace of play. And, Jonathan Taylor was clicking this past weekend. He had over 20 fantasy points, if I saw it right. Mm-hmm. Which is great for him, and I believe, the Colts ended up losing. Correct. Or no, they beat the Browns, right? Is that no?
They lost.
Who did they play? Yeah, I'm sorry, Jesus Christ. That's right. PJ Walker got the win. My apologies. No, but Gardner Minshew had a fucking monster day. He had 31.1 fantasy points. He had combined for only 26.6 in the previous 2 games. So keep that in mind, but he's rostered in 21% of the leagues. He's another guy that I think if you need somebody due to the bye, you had an injury and you only had that one quarterback, he's another quarterback that you may be able to grab and get your hands on. And if you had that Josh Dowd and Gardner Minshew stack, which is crazy to say in 2023, you may actually been all right this past weekend. So those are just a couple quarterbacks I wanted to throw out there, Ivan.
All right. I mean, that's solid.
Tyson Bagent too. Go grab him if you want him. Bears fans, if you think he's the second coming to Jesus and, he's going to go out there and throw the ball over the field 12 yards at a clip. And hey, but he's rostered in like 12% of leagues. So, as us Bears fans, we were talking about this for the last hour and a half, Ivan, you and I, he did okay. There's no real fantasy, relevance. There's weapons there though. DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. He's got the running backs. If they start running the ball, you may be able to, you may see him flip it around a little bit. But, I only think he really has to throw it if they're down. That's the only way I see him doing that.
So I'll shock you a little bit. I'm going to go with a kicker. Going to go with the kicker here.
All right.
Dustin Hopkins. Past couple weeks, right?
Oh, Anthony's son. Yeah.
17 points. 22 points as a kicker. So he's gotten a lot of opportunities in the past few weeks to put the ball through the uprights. But he's also had 2 games this year with 12 points, 1 of 9 and 1 of 5. So, I mean, if his worst game is 5 and his best game's at 22 and he's like continuing this upward trajectory, go ahead and try to say, especially if you're
he's rostered in 18% of the league.
Exactly, especially if you got a carousel at the kicker position.
If you can get that kind of production out of your kicker, man, God,
you never know. You never know. So you never know if you strike gold with a guy and he just becomes automatic for a while.
I like Young Hui Koo. That's my guy.
Yeah.
I like that Steph Curry walk-off this past weekend when he hit it, just turned around and walked away. It was pretty good. Game winner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any more, Jackal?
Oh, you're sticking with the kicker? All right. No, I started with quarterbacks. I was just going to slide down to the running backs. There's plenty of injuries like we talked about. Yeah, Bijan Robinson with those migraines. That fucking sucked, dude. That was awful for everybody. When I looked on Sunday afternoon, I'm like, wait, what the fuck is happening? I had no idea because, I was coaching and I was going to say earlier, I made the cardinal sin. I took Deebo Samuels out of my starting lineup, picked somebody up, and I never hit save on my and so I played no wide receiver slot, and I lost by 12 points. So, I deserve that shit. But, that's pretty embarrassing to say.
Make sure you double check your rosters.
Yeah, make sure you hit save. But, hey, if you started Dante Foreman last week, good for you. Tyler Algieri, Jeff Wilson, Chuba Hubbard, Tajay Spears, and Roshan Johnson are some guys I want you to try to see if they're out there sitting around. A lot of them, have been cut, dropped, roster crunches. If you don't have any IR spots, people have been getting dropped. So I would take a look to see if those guys are available. But you brought up Darrell Henderson Jr. If he's available, you should definitely try to grab him. Rostered in 34%. He was the guy to grab. But the dude from Arizona, Amari DiMercado, we talked about him last week or 2 weeks ago, and I don't think he had that great of a day. But then the following weekend, this past Sunday, he actually did pretty well. He handled 94% of the running back opportunities in Week 7. Mm-hmm. He does have some brutal matchups with the Ravens and Browns. But if you need a running back that's looking at probably the 12 to 16 touches range, he's your guy. So that's a running back that I just wanted to throw on the list that he might have been dropped actually after his Week 6 performance. Yeah. And he was sitting on the waiver wire all weekend. So that's a guy I wanted you to think about. Anybody else?
Well, no, I mean, for me, it's very touch and go. Like Joshua Kelly is a guy that you could pick up.
Yeah.
He had a big game he had one big run, but that was big for him. And he's a guy that can break it. And he's a guy that the Bears are going to see this week. So he's a guy you could pick up, but for me, it's starting to I'm starting to get very picky on how I spend my spend my fab, how I who I drop and who I don't. Just because now that we're in the middle of the season, I'm like, all right, if I drop this guy because he hasn't been, playing well, and then all of a sudden he turns it on, I'm gonna feel like a jackass. You know what I'm saying? So it's been for me, it's very touch and go right now with as far as picking people up and dropping people. For me, I'm gonna go ahead and probably stay pat right now. If there's like I said, Joshua Kelly's a guy that I'd keep an eye on.
Okay.
Obviously, you're gonna go ahead and try to pick up Donta Foreman, Gus Edwards if you can.
Yeah.
57%.
Yeah.
Like I said, right now you got to kind of see where the trends are going. See, pay attention to the injury report for each team, and go from there.
Yeah.
We
You
got a
talked
good
about
question.
Brian Robinson not performing well,
Mhm.
and having a tough week. Chris Rodriguez Jr. rostered in 2% of the leagues. He's a guy that's seen he has seen increased touches over the last couple of weeks. And so keep an eye on that, man. He may be a guy that you grab. You don't even have to put a claim in. Grab him tomorrow morning and just stash him and see if they move him on the depth chart and he just starts to get more love and with the Commanders. But yeah, no, that's a good point, man. I do appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and read this. We'll get into the questions. I don't know if you're done. You got any more?
We talked about Josh Browns. You talked Josh Downs, Kendrick Bourne. You brought up Jalen Hyatt is a guy that I think you could think about grabbing. He was a wide receiver, another rookie. His usage continues to rise. He was at the wide receiver 2 spot for them in week 7 due to injuries. Played 70% of the snaps. He had 2 catches for 75 yards. He's definitely a stretch the field guy. He has 5 targets though, which led the Giants in targets. And he also Hyatt leads the NFL, averaging 22 yards per catch. So he's definitely worth adding in those deeper leagues. Grab Romeo Dobbs if he's out there by any chance, if you can. But that was kind of it with respects to my, I could go for days. I have a giant list, but, I think, tight ends wise, Dalton Kincaid kind of performed a little well. He had a great game, 8 catches, 75 yards on 8 targets against the Patriots. Dawson Knox is now out with wrist surgery. So, hey, now it's time. If you held on to him, good for you. If not, you have to fight for him like everybody else. And, Jake Ferguson, we talked about him at the beginning of the year. Hey, go grab him if you can, if he's out there. Rostered 61%, but you never know. Yeah, dude. Do you want to get to some questions and wrap this bad boy up?
Yeah, sounds good. So first question with Josh, would you trade Carr for Roschon Johnson and Jonnu? 20-man PPR. My roster is Russ, JT, Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk, Komet, and Jacoby Myers.
I'm not the biggest Derek Carr fan. As I saw that question, I wanted to bring up Carr's numbers. He had 18 points. He threw for 300 yards, threw the ball 55 times, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 1 fumble. Your quarterback's Russ, so I see why you're making this trade. If you're that desperate, maybe you do pull the trigger there. It looks like, you have the 1 running back, so I don't know if you have anybody else, but Roschon's been hurt, and Jonnu is definitely, he could end up outperforming Komet, but at the same time, it sounds like you're a Bears fan, so you wouldn't mind having him in your lineup. So, hey, pull the trigger. Have some fun with it.
Yeah, why not? It's Derek Carr and Russ right now are the same guy. So
he's saying you'd be getting rid of him, getting rid of Derek Carr.
That's what I'm saying. So if you have Russ and you have Derek Carr, they're the same guy. So yeah, I'd pick up Roschon Johnson, when healthy.
And Jonnu.
Jonnu's kind of hit or miss, but
from that
Roschon Johnson
perspective, I just think Russ stinks too, though. Russ is definitely, he's bad. That's the only problem. Russ is Russ. 13.9 points, 20 for 29, 194 yards and a touchdown. I mean,
not good.
You know, you're not going to play. You're not playing Roshan now, so I mean, you're gaining points with the quarterback switch. So I guess, yeah, I guess I'd do it. I would. Or no, I wouldn't do it. I talk myself out of it. Don't do it.
So you won't do it, Jack.
I wouldn't trade Derek Carr. I'd keep him as my starter. I wouldn't trade for Jonnu, and I wouldn't.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Bob. Need 2 flexes.
No, he's got JT
Half
and Aaron
PPR,
Jones. Right.
half PPR. T. Higgins, Christian Watson, KJ Osborne, or Tyler Algier. It needs 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go with Higgins and I'd go with Algier.
I mean, I like Higgins coming back. They're coming off the bye. I like that with Burrow even more healthy with that calf, just healing up even more. So I'm gonna go with Higgins, but I'm gonna stay away from the Packers. I think they're fucking trash. I think fucking Jordan Love sucks, and I think they need a quarterback, and they're gonna try to go get Jim Harbaugh as their coach for fucking next year. I'm afraid. In some weird fucking way. I have nightmares of seeing that just because we're Bear fans and we're tortured, but I actually agree with you with your picks. KJ Osborne, while I can appreciate the sentiment with respects to Justin Jefferson being out, but Addison is the guy over there. What he did last night, he looked fucking awesome. But I think I'm going to go with Higgins and your boy Algieri.
Okay. All right.
Watson and Palmer. Same thing. I think Palmer's a guy that actually he was a dude that performed really, really well this past weekend. You brought him up, right? Was that somebody you brought up, or was that me? Or am I imagining?
No, not Palmer. I didn't bring up Palmer.
No. All right. Well, he had a great weekend. Where is he? I wrote about him. He had 18.3 fantasy points. He had 4 catches for 60 yards, but he actually had a bunch of points taken away for penalties. He had a 27-yard touchdown that was taken away for an ineligible man downfield, and then there was another penalty. But he ended up, needless to say, 5 of 7, 133 yards. Would have been the total day, but ended up not being a day for him, but still had 18.3 fantasy points. So I thought he was really, really great. I think, again, Palmer versus Watson, I'm not high in the Packers. I think they're struggling. I don't know. I think there's trouble in paradise up there in Cheese fucking Bill or whatever it's called. So I think I'm starting Palmer.
I think I'll go with you. I don't trust the quarterback situation up in Green Bay. I don't trust Christian Watson to this point. All he's done is be injured and inconsistent. So I'm going to go with Palmer. Just for the simple fact that I don't trust the Packers and their situation right now. Well,
do you? I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know who has the most 15 or more, 15 plus rushing yards on a single play? Who has the most of those for running backs this year in the NFL?
You're gonna have to repeat that question.
I butchered that. My brain's mush right now. So. Most runs of 15 plus yards.
Oh, most runs of 15 plus. It's probably a backup. No.
Think fast. We've talked about 2 of these guys a lot. I'm going to see if anyone, and if you're in the chat.
Jahmyr Gibbs?
Gibbs is not one of them, but that's actually a pretty good guess. But he was injured, so I'm going to say that kind of hurts him. But number 1 is Raheem. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. Raheem Mostert is number 1. He has 8 this year.
I should have thought about the Dolphins.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So I said think fast because we talked about how fast they ran one day. They're 23 guys. Devon, what's his last name?
Khan.
Yes, he's second with 7, which is wild. But a guy that we've been shitting on, Derrick Henry. No, he's in 7th place as well. But the one that fucking blew my mind was Najee Harris coming in at 4th place with 6. He's been awful this year. And It's pretty wild to see. Brees Hall has 6, Kenneth Walker Jr. 6, James Conner 6, ETN 6, CCMC 6. Sucks to see Connor and Akon hurt because they might be fucking hands above the rest. But it just I saw that and I was like, oh, I'm gonna ask Ivan at the end there what he thought of that. So whatever. I'm rambling.
No, it's all good. It was a good question. I mean, I should have thought the Dolphins at first. For some reason I was thinking like CMC or some somebody. It's like somebody that was like real fast, like a McLaughlin or something like that.
Yeah, I get it. When a specialty guys that come in and just fucking break it all. Yeah, got you.
Yeah, Najee's on his way out in my opinion as well. Like I don't trust Najee.
Jalen Warren
at all. Yeah, you had mentioned that a couple weeks ago, I believe, Jalen Warren, and how you were on him because of the inconsistency at Najee Harris.
That I tested. You see it and you're just like, dude, he just looks better, So.
Right. Anyway, guys, let's go wrap this up.
Yeah, man, we've been going at it for a while.
Yeah, I know. We went. What did we start? 7:30 started. I've been actually doing this for like the past couple of days, just getting everything kind of ready here and there. I've watched the game.
Killing it.
I've watched the game like 1,000 times. I feel like since it got finished on Sunday, but either way, it's been a great Tuesday. Love being here on Tuesday nights with you guys. It's always fun. Keeping It Fantasy with Chris Jacko and Ivan Vargas. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Become a patron at www.thetapeneverlies.com. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Darrington Evans,
yes, sir.
Chicago Bears running back on Keeping It 100. And then Thursday night, Cars Keys, giving you that analytical knowledge that you so crave. And then, of course, the big show on Sunday, BHL, right after the game, Bears and Chargers. Hear what DDP and the smartest man, Shane Marsaw, have to say about it. Like I said, also, if you want the halftime show, where do they go, Jack?
Patron. You gotta go to Patreon, bro. Gotta go to Patreon.
Patrons. Join the Patreon channel right there. www.thetapeneverlies.com. All right, guys.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna get out of here. For Chris Jacko, I'm Ivan Vargas. It's been a great Tuesday night. We'll see you next time.
What's your fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football